Today, Mark Carney walked into the heart of American finance and delivered a speech that Donald Trump probably never wanted to hear. Standing before some of the most influential business leaders in the United States, Carney made a simple argument. At a time when countries and investors are searching for stability, predictability, and reliable partners, Canada is increasingly becoming the answer. That is a remarkable message to deliver in New York. Because for years, Donald Trump has tried to pressure Canada through tariffs, threats, and economic uncertainty. Yet instead of showing weakness, Carney arrived in America's financial capital to pitch Canada as one of the most attractive places in the world to invest, grow, and do business. And by the end, Carney delivers a warning that completely flips the usual Canada-US conversation on its head. A stronger Canada should not a problem for America. It may be exactly what America needs. So if you enjoy in-depth coverage of Mark Carney, Donald Trump, Canada-US relations, and the major political and economic stories shaping Canada's future, subscribe to Canada Today, and let's get into it.
When I reflect on earlier periods, those were relatively untroubled times. But now the global landscape is experiencing a fundamental disruption. This transformation brings both opportunities and obstacles. Driven primarily by the United States, we're witnessing technological advancement moving at an unprecedented velocity, unlike anything we've experienced in our generation. America is reshaping every one of its trade relationships, which is completely within its prerogative to do. The international order is fragmenting, while simultaneously becoming more perilous. Here in Canada, we identified these seismic changes before many other nations did. Our strategy embodies the fundamental principle we've extracted from these massive transformations. Specifically, the principle dictates that we must secure our own position and remain authentic to our values. Securing our position involves strengthening our domestic capabilities and expanding our alliance network internationally.
The world is undergoing a rupture led by the United States. That was a remarkable opening, because Carney didn't pretend everything was normal. He openly exposed that the United States is transforming the global order and forcing countries everywhere to rethink their future. But what stood out most was his response. Not panic, not fear, preparation. While many countries were still trying to figure out how to respond to Trump's America, Carney argued that Canada saw these changes coming early and started adapting before everyone else. That is a direct challenge to the idea that Canada should simply wait and react to Washington.
During our initial year governing, we reduced levies on earnings, on investment profits, and on fresh enterprise expenditures. We established what we call the productivity superdeduction. The critical detail is that this measure provides Canada with the most advantageous taxation rate for fresh investment throughout the G7 nations. Our rate sits at half the G7 median and stands 4 percentage points beneath the United States rate. We're currently mobilizing $1 trillion in capital destined for Canada across the upcoming 5-year period. These investments span energy sectors, transportation infrastructure, information systems, and defense capabilities. We've initiated our most substantial regulatory overhauls in multiple decades to expedite approval of hundreds of billions in transformative infrastructure initiatives. We're also fulfilling our complete capacity as a global energy powerhouse. Before this decade concludes, Canada will ship approximately 50 million tons of liquefied natural gas each year. Before the following decade ends, we will amplify that export capacity twofold. We're developing a prospective pipeline infrastructure capable of transporting no less than 1 million barrels of reduced-emission Alberta petroleum daily to Pacific Rim markets, simultaneously establishing an entirely fresh sector focused on industrial-scale carbon sequestration and containment. We're constructing at this very moment the planet's inaugural functioning small modular reactor among G7 countries, while simultaneously scaling up our globally preeminent uranium extraction operations. Throughout the previous year, we've executed 56. That's 56 distinct critical mineral partnerships with over 10 different nations, releasing over $18 billion in investment capital while decreasing reliance on international bottlenecks within those essential supply networks. We are expanding our electrical generation capacity by a factor of 2. That represents more than 160 gigawatts of additional generating capacity, building upon the most affordable electricity rates in the G7 and the second cleanest power emissions profile in the OECD. This exemplifies what an energy superpower achieves when it commits to genuinely operating as one. Simultaneously, we're expanding our international alliance portfolio. We've concluded more than 20 economic and security partnerships spanning 5 continents throughout the last 12 months.
Canada is becoming the best place to invest. This is where the speech became incredibly important. Remember where Carney is standing. He's not in Toronto, he's not in Ottawa, he's in New York, and he's telling American investors that Canada now offers some of the most competitive conditions in the developed world. Think about that. Trump spent years trying to make Canada look vulnerable. Carney is standing in America's financial capital, arguing the exact opposite. That Canada is where the opportunities are.
We are advancing successfully because Canada possesses substantial quantities of what global markets require and desire. From energy resources to essential elements of aerospace technology, cybersecurity capabilities, artificial intelligence development, and quantum computing. Our retirement investment funds are among, and several representatives are present today should you require capital. Our retirement funds, though I doubt the Economic Club of New York requires financing, but our retirement funds rank among the most advanced infrastructure capital allocators globally, and our banking institutions are among the most stable. We're also advancing successfully because our standing as a dependable, consistent partner has seldom been more precious in an environment where individual deals are supplanting long-term relationships. We're fortunate to have numerous natural resources in Canada, but we have cultivated the most precious resource, which is credibility.
Trust is Canada's most valuable commodity. That may have been the most powerful line of the entire speech. We have earned trust. And honestly, in today's world, that is a direct comparison. Because businesses can tolerate taxes. They can tolerate regulations. What they cannot tolerate is uncertainty. Carney is telling the world that Canada offers something increasingly rare: predictability. And investors notice that.
Canada is forecast to achieve the second most rapid economic expansion in the G7 during this year and the following year. We currently maintain the most robust budgetary position in the G7, and we're strengthening that competitive edge by reducing 10% of the federal government workforce, 20% of our expenditures on external consultants, and trimming the yearly increase of operational expenditures from exceeding 8% annually, which characterized the previous 10 years, to below 2%, which has been our rate since my administration began, and where it will remain. Exports to destinations beyond the U.S. are climbing dramatically, and we're progressing toward doubling them, which represents our objective across the forthcoming decade. Foreign capital investment is currently flowing at double the level of our closest G7 competitor. According to certain metrics, we are designated as the most appealing nation globally for infrastructure capital deployment.
Canada is the most attractive place for investment. This is where Carney moved from vision to proof. Foreign investment rising, strong fiscal position, fast growth. These are the numbers he wants investors to hear. Because speeches are one thing, results are another. And Carney is making the argument that Canada's strategy is already producing results, while much of the world is still struggling with uncertainty.
The appropriate reaction to these seismic forces, the worldwide disruption I outlined initially, the appropriate reaction at this moment is more evident than it might appear. It remains consistent. During turbulent times, success invariably rewards those willing to take calculated risks. Canada grasped this concept early. We comprehended the world's transformation. We recognize that yearning for the past is not a viable approach, so we're concentrating on factors within our control. That involves constructing an intricate network of global partnerships internationally. This is making us a considerably more powerful, more resilient, more self-sufficient nation. Most importantly, as one would anticipate, we're prioritizing initiatives that benefit Canada. This serves all Canadian citizens well, but it simultaneously serves the United States well, because a more capable Canada becomes a superior ally. We recognize that although Canada and the United States have experienced our disagreements across the centuries, we have consistently worked and ultimately resolved them because we hold common values and our mutual interests extend profoundly. Those mutual interests pervade our economic systems. Canada stands as America's biggest purchaser. We acquire more merchandise from America than China. Canada is America's biggest purchaser.
Nostalgia is not a strategy. This line has always hit hard, because without naming Donald Trump, Carney essentially rejected the politics of looking backwards. His argument is simple. The world has changed. The economy has changed. The geopolitical landscape has changed. And countries that spend their time trying to recreate the past risk missing the future. This was one of the clearest philosophical differences we've seen between Carney's approach and Trump's approach.
Japan and Germany together purchase less than Canada does. Those shared interests flow through our production networks, where 70% of Canadian shipments serve as components for American vehicles, residences, aircraft, equipment, completed products, generating hundreds upon hundreds of billions of dollars in U.S. economic value addition. They flow through our energy collaboration, where during a period of worldwide energy shortage, Canada supplies the United States with dependable power, with essential minerals that support American economic expansion. Natural gas purchases from abroad, 85% of electricity purchases from abroad, 60% of petroleum purchases from abroad. This represents reciprocal strength. As we make absolutely transparent, Canada's strength will contribute to making America great again. The instances demonstrating this truth are numerous, areas where we should collaborate and challenge the world together. Toward those objectives, we have presented concrete practical suggestions to the U.S. government. Take aluminum as an example. It's fundamentally electricity transformed into a solid form. Canadian aluminum shipments to the United States represent the energy equivalent of 10 Hoover dams. Given America's expanding energy requirements driven by the remarkable transformation occurring here, does it genuinely make sense to construct the gigawatts domestically required to substitute Canada? Regarding automobiles, Canada is overwhelmingly America's largest purchaser. An integrated North American manufacturing ecosystem represents the optimal and most sustainable approach to address genuinely fierce international competition concerning critical minerals given our natural deposits from potash, nickel, copper, uranium, lithium, cobalt, and beyond. Canada can serve as the most dependable supplier America requires to place affordable nutrition on tables, enhance national security, and satisfy the surging demand to energize AI systems. So Alex is correct. We shouldn't minimize what lies ahead. As the United States nears its 250th anniversary, congratulations, as the most advanced, but it reaches this milestone as the most dynamic, resilient, and innovative nation the world has witnessed. As a nation whose foundational principles of freedom, democratic governance, fairness, and transparency should continue serving as beacons for its future and the future of humanity, that future should encompass a renewed partnership with Canada, a genuine partnership that reconceives collaboration in particular sectors facing significant challenges from international competition, a partnership with a transformed Canada, a more powerful Canada, a more assured Canada, a nation applying the insights from previous crises, a nation unleashing its tremendous capacity, a nation vigorously converting our commitment to openness into scores of fresh partnerships, a nation that's consistent, dependable, and values-driven in an environment that's none of those things.
Everything in this speech has been building toward this moment, because after laying out Canada's strengths, Canada's growth, Canada's investment story, and Canada's global partnerships, Carney now turns directly to the relationship with the United States. And what follows may be the most important message of the entire event, not because he attacks America, but because he reminds America how much it still needs Canada. What made this speech so important wasn't simply what Mark Carney said. It was where he said it. He delivered this message in New York, in the United States, in front of American business leaders, at a moment when Donald Trump has spent months trying to pressure Canada economically and politically. And instead of appearing weakened, Canada showed up with confidence. Throughout this speech, Carney presented a country that is attracting investment, building new partnerships, expanding its global reach, and preparing for a future where it is less dependent on any single country. That is a very different Canada than the one many people expected to see a year ago. And perhaps that is what makes this so uncomfortable for Trump. Because pressure only works when the other side breaks. Canada didn't break. It adapted. And today, in America's own financial capital, Mark Carney made the case that Canada's future may be brighter because of that adaptation, not despite it. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to subscribe to Canada Today for more coverage of Mark Carney, Donald Trump, Canada-US relations, global politics, trade, investment, and the major stories shaping Canada's future.